My name is Naila Lindsay, and I did my video on antibiotic resistance. Antibiotic resistance to bacteria describes a bacteria's ability to survive while being exposed to antibiotics. It develops when a bacteria is exposed to antibiotics, and there are three possible outcomes that can happen when this bacteria is exposed. It can either die out, become stagnant, or multiply. So a person may ask, well, what are the main factors that predict which is most likely to happen? There are three main factors that predict which will most likely happen when antibiotic resistance occurs. Antibiotic concentration is one, bacteria mutation, and bacteria genetic exchange. Antibiotic concentration, it's generally the more antibiotic getting to a bacteria would cause it to stagnate or die, and the less antibiotic will allow it to multiply. Some bacteria live in a biofilm. They live within biofilms. A biofilm is a jelly-like substance where thousands of bacteria cells are suspended inside. It's kind of like a big energy shield, you can say. The antibiotic diffuses through the biofilm to reach the bacterial cells. Some cells are only exposed to a fraction of the antibiotic due to how deep they are in the cells. Like when the antibiotic first enters, it may hit the closer bacteria cells, but the ones that are a little deeper, within the cell, they might just get only a small fraction of it. The second factor was bacteria mutation. Bacteria mutation is when a bacteria cell replicates. There's a small chance the new bacteria cell will not be exactly the same as the original. For example, in one bacteria cell, the cell wall could be slightly different, and in another bacteria cell, an enzyme could work poorly, and this is called a mutation. So bacteria can multiply within hours, allowing more mutations to occur over a short period of time. So they can multiply rapidly, multiply for hours, and this allows different mutations to take place. These mutations make it difficult for antibiotics to enter the bacteria or stick to it, making the antibiotic less effective at killing the bacteria. So the different mutations can make it difficult for antibiotics to enter bacteria, and this makes the antibiotic less effective. There are 4 common mutations. The first one is enzymes in the bacteria can eat and deactivate the antibiotic. The antibiotic are Antibiotics are ejected from the bacteria. Bacterial wall can prevent the antibiotics from entering. The bacteria can also adopt a new way of processing energy. These mutations may thrive where non-mutant bacteria die, and new antibiotics must be used to kill them. The third factor that can contribute to this antibiotic resistance is bacterial genetic exchange. Bacteria loves to share information. Even two different kinds of bacterial species, they can share information with one another. As a result of this, once a single bacterial species has managed to resist antibiotics with a gene or genes that that gene or genes can get copied and passed around to other bacteria. So it's kind of like, two old friends sitting in a park talking, gossiping. They want to share information with each other, and when they get that information, they continue talking more and more and more, just like these bacterial cells. They exchange information, and once the information is exchanged, it can get copied and passed around to other bacteria. Then more and more bacteria learn how to resist antibiotics, which is not good. An example of this is antibiotic resistance among Staphylococcus aureus. It is increasingly common. It's common for antibiotics to resist this. Resistance to the macrolide antibiotics, such as, and excuse me if I pronounced this wrong, such as clindamycin and streptogramins. The inducible resistance results from binding of a macrolide to specific upstream translational attenuator, so sequences. It leads to changes in the mRNA secondary structure, exposure of the ribosomal binding site, and translation of the methylase. Now, how do we prevent all of this from happening? How do we slow down the antibiotic resistance against bacteria and, find other ways to kind of prevent this from happening? Well, to limit antibiotic resistance, you have to limit the exposure that bacteria all over the planet have to antibiotics. And you can do this one or two ways. You can do this by taking the antibiotics responsibly, which means you take them only if you have a bacterial infection, not a virus. Antibiotics do not kill viruses. I repeat, you only take antibiotics if you have a bacterial infection, not a virus. Okay? Being really selective in how we use the antibiotics can also keep them from becoming obsolete. Another way to prevent this from happening is to dispose of the antibiotics correctly. Okay, disposal should be done in a way that minimizes the exposure of bacteria living in the environment to the antibiotic. For instance, do not crush the antibiotics or flush them down the toilet. It gives the antibiotic direct access to bacteria living in the soil and the water. And then that just causes more and more problems because, when you drink the water or anything like that, this can just contribute to the issue of antibiotic resistance. So if we try to do these few easy things to prevent antibiotic resistance in bacteria, then this could help us in the long run.